I am fine with you like using me for a video or whatever, or like even just like small snippets of a bigger video or something like that. Just a disclaimer I want to make for you and possibly YouTube or whatever is I am currently doing my homework and I have a bedtime in like an hour and a half at the latest. So
W.
this might not be a full delve. This
Well,
might
that's
not
okay.
be
I don't
something that
really like. I honestly don't really like when my videos are more than like 30 minutes to an hour. So
I don't know if it was a point that you had made or if someone else had made. Nothing like that. It's not like I'm trying to get a gotcha moment on any of you guys. But like I remember a comment being made like the surgery itself is risky and that's a reason why whoever said it doesn't support it or something like that. But it's less risky than getting Botox or BBLs or any sort of cosmetic changing surgery for a person. Like
yeah, I'm not
those are
that. I think it wasn't me that made that point. I mean, I did agree with people that I was against like having the surgery. I have no reason to be against it other than I just think it's like not right to do the surgery because I think it's more of like a like a body mutilation thing in my head. I guess is like how I see it.
yeah. And I think that's a totally fair assumption, especially like I don't want to assume bad of you or anything. It's how I am about it, right? I don't know enough about the surgery to really have a well formulated opinion on it, right? Like I don't even know how I'm not a doctor and I don't understand surgery to begin with. Um, but with that being said, like I think the best I can do to when it comes to that topic is look into it and make a conclusion from there and like the benefits versus the like the cost benefit difference of doing the surgery versus not doing it because there is a genuine like um mental illness that is going on for those people who are experiencing gender dysphoria and their sex is not matching their gender where when they go through that transition um through the surgery there is a genuine like
Yeah, I guess like
uplift to their mental health.
I guess like that's kind of like where I draw the line or like my issue arises is like if you're willing to make the distinction that sex and gender are different, which I think like which is where that argument we had the other night where they couldn't like they couldn't grasp it. Like
Yeah.
so if like let's just we're on the same page. Like it's different, right? There's two definitions for sex and gender. Okay, so if you're willing to make that argument and agree with me on that, then I don't see the point in like trying to align your sex and gender because it's like, well, if you're like if I'm accepting you that your sex is one thing and your gender's another, whether it's different or the same, like then the surgery thing is kind of ridiculous to me.
From what I can understand, and forgive me if I'm misunderstanding you, from what I can understand, when like they say I feel as though I'm they're born male, right? But they say I feel as though I'm female. I think there's an oversimplification of your understanding of what they're saying. From the research and what's been going on when it comes to like the human brain, is the human brain. I'm going to even oversimplify this because it's way more complicated than what I'm going to say. But say you're born with male genitalia, so your sex is male. The person is then born like where sex is determined pretty early in the pregnancy stage. The brain is developed later at a whole later term, very separate from the sex
Well, yeah, your brain really doesn't even fully develop until like you're like into your
right.
well, yeah, even more so. Like they say that your brain isn't fully developed until you're like in your teenage years.
Right. But even just in the sense of its formation during pregnancy and stuff, like this is where the earliest stages of this take place, I guess you could say, right? What happens in some cases, and again, this is an oversimplification as well as someone who who didn't partake in the research trying to regurgitate what they read. You're born with the sex of a male, but your brain, it's not like a conscious thought of you thinking you're female. Your brain literally develops to be female. And so as you're growing up, you have a female brain in a male body, where but you look down and you see that you have a penis. And that's where gender dysphoria kicks in, and it's where a lot of the torment starts to happen, because there's just so much chemical imbalances going on throughout your body with like the testosterone as well as a female brain conflicting with each other. And it's not simplified to the matter of that person saying, oh, I feel female, I'm interested in feminine things and things like that. It's like, I have a genuine female brain trapped in a male body, and it is tormenting for me. Like, I do not want to live the rest of my life like this. It is so hard to live like this, and I want to go through this surgery to reaffirm what my brain says. I know that I won't be able to be pregnant because I wasn't born with those things, but at least with the surgery, I can feel as though I'm closer to matching my brain, because that's easier than changing my brain to be a male brain.
Okay, if we really truly do think that like a brain can have a genuine sex or like gender in the brain, and like, again, I think that's fine with me, but I don't think it's I don't think it's necessarily a biological thing. I think it's more of like a societal, like there's societal influence that may make you more or less feminine or masculine. And of course, there's probably things going on in the brain. But my point is like, the slippery slope is then, okay, we will allow you to like mutilate yourself. And that's where I'm like, well, no, because the whole, you can do whatever you want as long as you don't harm other people, I also apply to yourself. Like, I don't think you should just be able to harm yourself willy-nilly. Like,
right.
I don't think that's... And like and I actually get into this argument with Cole a lot, because I always bring up, like, he always brings up, I guess we bring up like a druggie example where he's like, well, the druggie thinks it's fine to do drugs. And I'm like, and he's like, what makes your morale so great that you can't allow them to do drugs? And I'm like, well, because they physically harm themselves. Like, I don't think physical harm of yourself or others is like, whether you think it's good or not, like, that's not the point. You're physically harming yourself,
Well, okay. It's not that I wholeheartedly disagree with you. I do agree, but I also have my disagreements with the sentiment. One thing I want to point out, it's not it's not a counterpoint or anything, but it's just one thing to point out when it comes to, say, even both the killer's mind and the gender's mind. One thing to point out is, Brad, the thing you do with the person who wants to kill people is you find a solution for them, just as you find a solution for the gender people, right? Like, that is the way to go about it. It's not to just simply say, we allow them to hurt themselves or hurt others. It's, there's a problem, let's find a solution, and maybe we don't have the best solutions for either right now, and that's why research is being done to try and figure that out, right? Just thoughts out there. But also with like the druggy one, the drug thing, where it's like moral, where you brought up like wanting to hurt people or things like that. Fuck.
I guess I really quick, actually, like like, because I always hate when like having political discussions with people and like we never actually get to a solution, and it's always like hypothetical talk. So anyways, I want to bring up a solution really quick to this, and I want to see what you think. Do you think, and actually this is going to be a question, this is my solution in the form of a question. Do you think, and you can be honest, do you think that if, let's say tomorrow I snap my fingers and everybody in the United States is suddenly extremely accepting of transgender people, so not people, maybe not necessarily people who have gone through the surgery and like complete, like, switch sexes, but like people who are transgender, like they are a male, they have a penis and everything, their physical anatomy is the same, but they claim to be a woman. Everyone tomorrow, I snap my fingers, everyone's accepting of them. Do you think people still have the trans sex surgery or no?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Yes. My understanding is that the transsex surgery is a genuine. A lot of them see it as a genuine answer to a lot of their dysphoria or a lot of their mental health problems. And with studies of people afterwards, yeah, there are suicides, but there tends to be other things, more so from social pressure and social backlash to the surgery than the surgery itself. Where there are those cases of people who regret the surgery and stuff, but there's also a lot of people who, after the surgery, their mental health improves and they don't feel like they're trapped in a foreign body anymore because they feel that way all their lives.
See, I would almost hope that that were true. Like, I would almost hope that if everybody were just accepting tomorrow, nobody would have the transsex, like the sex change surgery, because, like, the fact that, again, let's assume that it does. Like, let's assume tomorrow it happens and people still get the surgery. To me, that just proves that it really truly is like a mental illness, because if society is completely accepting of it and okay, and you still don't like feel better about it, then I think it is all in your mind. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you remove the what I'm trying to, I guess what I'm really saying is, if society was removed, like, and all society pressure was removed, and it didn't alleviate like the issues with like transgender, people being mean to transgender people and like all of this, then I think that just proves like, oh, this really is a mental disease that needs to be addressed, and like we shouldn't be doing the transsex surgery because it's like, it's like a never-ending loop. It would be like if we were having this debate about people on drugs, or like with like major addictions. Doesn't have to be drugs, any kind of like major addiction, and we were like, there's two ways to go about this. Either we just say it's not a major mental illness, and it's not like something that's life-threatening or like dangerous mentally, and so we just let them keep doing that addiction, because like, let's just let them go through all the way to the end because it seems to help. Versus, the other side would be, well, let's just get rid of it and like cold turkey them and see if that helps. And obviously at first it'll be like really destructive, but then in the long run it'd be helpful. That's where I'm kind of looking with this whole thing with the transsex surgery. Again, I'm not trying to go back on my whole like belief that I do think sex and gender are different, and I think you can have a different gender, but like
your sentiment here is that it's not maybe you have a problem with it, but it's much more like because of its controversy as well as its lack of understanding.
Exactly.
Change is what you have a problem with. It's not that you have a problem with the difference between gender and sex,
absolutely,
that people are transgender.
Absolutely.
It's just that the idea of doing the transition is where you have a problem with it.
Yeah, and again, it's not because I think it's weird, and it's not because like I'm like some kind of like fucking like authoritarian. No, I'm not trying to be a dick about it. Like, this is coming from a place of concern. Yeah, like I'm genuinely concerned, because again, like someone with addiction, again, I go back to this point, like if we were trying to research a new addiction, like or a new issue, like one of the first things we would do is like, okay, what happens if we let them go all the way and just continue this addiction? Is it actually okay? Because if it is, then maybe it's not an issue and we just let them do it, right? Like the first people to drink water, right? Like if people were drinking water like crazy and it was a new thing, we'd be like, okay, like maybe we should just let them keep going and see like where this water thing goes. And like,
yeah, I have a point for two things there, because you brought up the water as well. So first off, one, there is such a thing as too much water. You literally can drown just from drinking.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But with that,
do you see what I'm saying though? Like, I'm not trying to be a dick about it. Like, I'm genuine. Like, I just don't want it to.
I want to find the common ground in the understanding that you're not like anti-trans or anything like that. You might not even be anti the transition, but you are anti not thinking about it and not having enough information to make an informed decision. As someone who literally relies on analogy to try and make the point across, I get the use of these analogies.
I think the analogies suck.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm sorry about the analogies being used, I have to say do suck. I think there's a genuine difference between drug addiction and gender dysphoria, as well as when it comes to solutions for the both, problems for the both. Like they just aren't. The only connection I see there is the mind, right? Like how it affects the mind, where addiction, how like addiction affects the mind versus how gender dysphoria affects the mind. I think that's the only real connection that can be made. And it's not to like put you down for your use of analogy and everything like that. Analogy is a very powerful tool, and it's one I heavily use. But because I use it all the time, when I do talk to people who are really well informed, my analogies fall apart because I'm not able to articulate examples well enough. But
Yeah.
there is harm in bad analogies, and so trying to make that analogy with like the use of drugs or the water one, I get where you're trying to go with it, but the analogies themselves are doing you a discredit versus helping you out.
Yeah.
It really does kind of fall apart when you try and actually utilize the analogy. Because the first thing I would say, and I'm trying to recall everything you said. I'm not the best at retaining information to begin with. I'm trying to recall what you had said. You mentioned something like, or there was something about like the morals of doing drugs or something, a conversation you were having, as well as like letting them either go all the way out or stopping it, things like that. I think one thing that comes down to it is talking to the people and actually like looking at it on an individual basis versus a generalized basis, because each individual each individual who's experiencing gender dysphoria has their own degree of problems with it, as well as their own degree of hopes and wants with it.
Right.
The same as people who are addicted to drugs. Most people addicted to drugs don't want to be addicted to drugs, which is a broad generalization, but it is a common consensus with it when it comes to addiction. Same with like sex addiction, things like that. People recognize they're addicted to something and it causes problems. So the main concern is when it comes to like drug use and drug addiction, when you talk to most people, they don't want to be, hence the form of it, why it's an addiction, why it's a problem. Like they don't want to be addicted to drugs. We may not have the best solutions, but the solution we want to go for is no longer being addicted to drugs, right? And to tie the analogy in with gender dysphoria, it's people who feel as though they are trapped in the wrong body when it comes to their sex versus their gender. They're experiencing, their brain is a female brain inside a male body, and their solution is they want to be in a male body or a female body because their brain is they identify with their brain and not their genitalia, and their brain is female. The solution they're looking for is to also be in a female body. And where it gets complex is there are people who, where it's like non-binary, there are people who have a brain that doesn't identify as male or female, which is a whole nother thing. And it goes there's genuine like biology and neurochemistry that goes on there, things I don't fully understand and I haven't read into enough yet to be able to tell you. But I say that to kind of hopefully dissuade you trying to argue that confusion with me, in the sense of just like anyways, not important,
I just thought of my thing, by the way, and I'll just say it really quick. My point with the whole like what the issue could be is I guess my point is that I think it could be more of a societal issue than it necessarily is a like an issue that we need to address with the person themselves, if that makes sense. Like that's why I asked the question, like if society were to change tomorrow, do you think people would still want to go all the way through to the end? And that's why I asked, because I think I'm on the boat that like this is more of a societal problem, that like because society is so, or seems to be so anti this and against it and think it's weird, it actually makes people want to like go through all the way, like almost as like a proof to those people, like, oh, you don't think I'm a woman? Well, look, I don't have a penis anymore. I'm a woman.
Okay.
Right? You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Well, so
but that is also a mind thing. Like that's a psychological thing. I mean, that's how laws work, actually, which is funny enough.
I have a few things for that, and a lot of them are to like address what you're saying, and it's both to support your concerns as well as like support the movement that's kind of going on. So first off, when it comes to like if society went through it with it all the way, what would be going on? So what I want to address is once it's done society, it leaves the problem of the individual still. The problem is there's a lot of trans people who aren't politically active, right? There's a lot of trans people who are in the closet who still are going through gender dysphoria. So on an individual scale, you still have this problem of, okay, I have a male brain in a female body. Regardless of how society sees it, say all the rights are made, say even the surgery is something that's like just willy-nilly easy to be done with, right? Like surgery has no complications, has no controversy behind it. Society's moved all the way to there. Science advancement has moved there. You still have a person with gender dysphoria who, as many of them describe it, same as how like drug addicts describe that they don't want to be on drugs, many gender dysphoria people describe it as living hell. They mentally feel trapped in a physical body that is not theirs, and even with all the societal influences of one or the other being gone, it is a problem that they have, right? Like they are going through this genuine problem where the surgery is still something many of them want to seek out. And there's many of them who don't want the surgery. There's many of them who are fine with never going through the surgery, but there are many who want to go through the surgery because of the living hell they go through. And that's why it's like referred to as gender affirming surgery. Like it's affirming their gender, which is in the brain, versus their sex, which is the physical body. And so regardless, they're going to go through with that. And like the point in which you're, or point analogy, the sentiment what you're making, where like, what if society reaches the end of it, right? Like all of it's fine. Say society was fully against drugs or fully for drugs. Drug use is still going to be a problem, one or the other, right? Like we've seen drugs be legalized and it be a problem. We've seen drugs be criminalized.
Yeah, that's why the drug thing is kind of a bad analogy, because drugs is like, I mean, drugs is just different, like you're saying. Like drugs, I wouldn't say, like the addiction part is similar, I would say, because it's a mental thing, but the drugs itself is different because drugs is like a physical thing, right? Like cocaine is a physical substance. Like gender dysphoria is not a physical thing I can just take and then I get, gender dysphoria. That's why it's a bad example, because like, yeah, like you said, if tomorrow society was in favor of drugs, like, yeah, that does mean drugs would still be a problem, but that's because drugs are a physical thing. Just because society says like, okay, we're in favor of it, doesn't mean it's gonna like disappear, because it's physically evident, right? Like you can go out and buy a physical thing of cocaine or meth or whatever, right? Like I guess my thing is, and I don't know, like I think maybe if the research really does say this, I think it's like grossly underestimating like society and its like power, because again, like there's plenty of research on like the development of children and how they turn out based on the societal impacts of them and like how they are raised. So
right. With that point, a lot of the research papers address that, and there's been a distinction made where the nurture versus nature does not play a part in the gender dysphoria, actually. So there was a common theory, and it was I couldn't really find the like deliberate science behind it, but there was a common idea that being gay or straight was nature versus nurture, right? Like if you're raised in a gay home with gay parents, you're gonna turn out gay. Like that was the misconception everyone kind of bought into, but the research has shown that that's not the case. Is that gender dysphoria is actually separate from nature versus nurture. It's not something about the environment you're born into. They do play factors, they do play roles, and to that degree, it might not be fully understood. But that's also coming from someone who doesn't fully understand the research itself. But with that, there is a distinction that has been made where nature versus nurture, like environment and societal influence, has not caused an effect with gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is actually isolated from that.
yeah, I'm not, and okay, maybe I I may have
So
confused you. I'm not saying that's like why it
right,
like comes about. I'm more saying like the degree to which it's like the degree to which it like displays, I think, could be like, and like to how bad it's okay like to your point of like people say it's like a living hell. Okay, that's a feeling. That's not necessarily like that's a feeling that they have as an effect of their gender dysphoria, right? And I think
Right.
the degree to which that comes out of them, like that fear or that living hell feeling, I think that is what could be could be made worse or better by society simply because society may or may not accept it. And that's my point. I'm not saying like their circumstances when they were raised like mean they have gender dysphoria or gay or something. No, I do. I'm with you, and I'm with the research on like, it probably is a like a real deal brain chemicals that they are just gay, right? Or they do have gender dysphoria. I mean, it's or like depression, like people with depression and stuff, or other mental illnesses. Not to put gay in the category of a mental illness because I don't think that, but other psychological things that occur that are natural, I think can be the way you feel those psychological what am I trying to say? You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So if I can try and articulate your point to see if we have if there is an understanding, right? Like, let me know if I'm wrong or not. I think what I'm assuming is one point you're making is a lot of the levels to which people want to satisfy their gender dysphoria is influenced by the societal acceptance of them. Is that something you are saying? So like,
yeah, I would include in that not just the acceptance, but like just the societal like influence. Like it doesn't even have to be like acceptance, but yes, yeah, I'm with you. Yep, following.
Okay, so like the point you were trying to make, where if society fully accepted, would people feel the need to go through the surgery because
right, exactly, yeah, that was exactly my point. Yep.
Okay, so I'm not necessarily going off research here or anything. This is just kind of my 2 cents for your 2 cents there. I think to a degree, yeah, that would be the case, right? If society was fully accepting, where I think it would be easier for these people to accept themselves, where they wouldn't feel so depressed and so self mismatched or whatever with their sex and gender, where they wouldn't feel a need to
yeah, I would agree
mismatch more. But I do want to emphasize, I think that's only going to be a margin of those people, right? Like
I would agree too. Like I think it would actually like my bet would be that it goes down drastically. I do think it would still happen, like 100%. I think it would still happen, but I think those cases where it still happens, I think need to be monitored very closely because, like, I think those could like those border on like a serious mental like disease and issue, because again, I'm a very heavy like society has a lot of power, and if society is in favor of you and you still feel like okay, I want to erase all that I just said. I think bottom line, with if people were to still continue, it's almost like we're lying to them, and I don't think that's necessarily like a good thing, because like again, if society is completely accepting, and we are in it's a hypothetical world where everyone's accepting this, right? But if the society were completely accepting and somebody were to still want the surgery and we said yes, I feel like it would be us doing a disservice, because like we'd be essentially lying to them like, oh yeah, like let's do the surgery, you're definitely a woman, right? And it's like, well, like biologically, again, like gender wise, like yeah, but you've always been a woman, right? Like so we're kind of like lying to them.
Yeah. So one thing with that is they don't mind being. This is where it kind of gets into that argument we were having with the other guys, right?
Yeah, right.
There's like where it comes to like the vocalization of it. They the reason why we have the term cis man and cis woman now is to also emphasize that the difference between trans man and trans woman. Because when people say, I want to be called, like, I want to be a woman, they still are scientifically a trans woman. Like, that is the term that is to be used as trans woman, or like non-binary and just transgender, things like that. Right. That's all stuff that I think is what society will allow and accept, as well as like what the science says is happening, as well as what those people themselves want. Where I think a trans woman is a trans woman, and they're going to ask you to just call them woman, which is up to you to call them woman. And it'd be that's much more just like the respect side of it. With that being said, they all know that they're trans. Like, most of them are fine being referred to as trans women or men, but I can't speak on behalf of any of them, actually. So I don't want to like make that the claim for you to like stick to or anything. But like,
right, sure.
You're saying like, we accept them as being women, but they're not women, but they're women, things like that. They know that they're a trans woman. A trans woman knows that they're not going to be able to be pregnant and give birth as a cis woman would. They know that. Everyone knows that. Regardless of that, they want their body to match their gender, and so they want to go through the transition anyways.
I guess that's the only reason I say that those cases would need to be monitored more, because I think that's beyond just like being transgender. That like I think that's leaning more into like a genuine like psychological issue.
Yeah,
because again, like you said, if everyone knows, including them, if everyone knows that they identify as a woman, and so we're like, okay, yeah, you're a woman, your gender is a woman, you're a woman as a gender, right? And they're like, yeah, but I still want the surgery. It's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's almost like
that's where it gets personal, though. That's
what I'm saying. That's exactly my point. Like, if it gets to the point where now it's like personal, it's like, well,
the thing is that it's always been personal, and it's been made a public thing because people can't satisfy that personal thing without the help of others. Like, if no doctor wants to help these people, they have to make it become known and make it a social thing so that doctors are understanding of it and are willing to help. It also gets researchers to research it and actually get a better understanding of it all, which is the case and why it's become much more acceptable. I think a lot of it has become more acceptable, and with like that's kind of like part of the reason the trans rights movement is going on, is because people have these personal problems, but they can't solve these personal problems without the help of others. And so these rights movements have been going on, same as what happened with the gay rights, civil rights, etc. And that's why, like,
yeah, but okay, again, like, I don't know, I just feel like, I don't know, like, I don't want to equate it to like gay rights, because I get it's different, but I mean, even with like gay rights, like, the movement was very much a movement of like, let us do our own thing, just let us do it. We're not trying to like throw it down your throats. We're just like, we just want to be gay, right? Like, and if you accept us for that, it's going to make everything so much better. And like, once that happened, like everything, I mean, not everything was fine, but you know, people who are gay are accepted a lot more often nowadays than they were, you know, even
right, because they were successful in their movement, right?
Right.
Same thing.
But again, if it's
and trans rights, both gay rights and trans rights fall under civil rights, and civil rights movement involved Black people or just people of color, right? Where there was a time where they weren't accepted in society and they didn't have rights. Their movement was successful, and now they are part of society. Gay rights movement was successful, now they are part of society. Trans rights need to be accepted, and they'll be part of society.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm with you on that. Again, I'm like, my point with this is that once, if it gets to that point and like people who are transgender still want trans sex surgery, that's where I'm like, okay, maybe this wasn't a whole like wanting to be accepted by society thing. Like, maybe this actually is like a mental issue, or a psychological disease. Like, because you know when
I think it's both. Just
it could be, yeah, and it could be, and I again, this is where like my concern comes out. Like, if that's the case, then I'm genuinely concerned for these people, and it shouldn't be just oh yeah, we'll let you have the like the sex change surgery, yeah, whatever. Because it's like, well, that could be physically harming if this is an actual, like, mental, psychological problem, right? Because, like, the thing I think about is, like, with the whole gay rights movement, once like, throughout the last 20, 30 years, as gay rights have, you know, I don't even know the right terminology, like, increased, or, like, they've become more accepted in society, the whole push for it has slowly gone down, right? Because as they become more accepted, there's not so much of, like, a need for more, because, like, they have it, right? You know what I'm saying?
We see that even in 2022, after even Trump's presidency and stuff like that. Obviously, they didn't revoke any of the rights for gay people, but the number just is constantly increasing, and it's become much more socially acceptable. I would say that there is going to be a much larger display or activities regarding gay rights or just gay people, right?
Yeah, I
No
just
longer ridicule against that.
I just meant like okay, let's just say we're in the world again where transgenderism is, like, completely accepted. I would 100% expect people who are transgender to spike, right? Or to slowly increase, because it's now accepted. Just the same with with gay marriage and stuff. When it was legalized, of course it spiked because it was it was more accepted, right? Um what I meant was during, like, the peak of, like, the movement and, like, like, protests and stuff. Are there still protests today? And is it at the same rate as it was before? And I would guess not.
My what I want to say, I don't have a statistic for you or anything. What I want to say, just through, like, both assumption and my own observation, um, there's always going to be some level, degree, or form of protest slash parade or just social community expression, as long as there's people who are against it, or
Yeah.
there's just a example of showing pride, right? Like,
Right.
pride is to just, like, celebrate it. But pride has a lot of negative connotations to it. Well,
Sure.
a lot of it due to just, like, fear mongering and stuff. There's also, like, there are bad things that happen from, like, a small minority on the rights movement, things like that. Like, that's all the case. All plays a part into it. But it's when, like, the pride stuff, like these social gatherings to celebrate this stuff, is no different than 4th of July, so
Right.
celebrating our
Yeah.
independence. It's a holiday, and it's a recognition of where we've gotten, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like, we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. because he was the leading voice in the civil rights movement. We celebrate Abraham Lincoln because he was the president who ended slavery. We celebrate I can't think of, like, a specific voice for the gay rights movement, but, like, like, there's heroes and all this stuff. There's things to be proud of, things to celebrate, cause for social events and stuff. That includes protest. And with all of that, still to this day, even though slavery was outlawed over 100 years ago, we still have racist people in America who still advocate for slavery, who still advocate for white supremacy. And it's not just white supremacists. There's supremacists for any racial group or ethnic group or even political group, right?
Right.
There's
Yeah.
people who are radicalized in everything.
Yeah.
And they all will receive backlash the same way that people in the right receive backlash. Like, people who are pro freedom for everyone, like, the North received backlash for wanting to free slaves. There's going to be that backlash, but also the South received backlash for not wanting to get rid of slaves, things like that.
Right, yeah.
That's always going to be the case with everything. And just because we get to a point where there's no longer civil rights issues happening with, like, blacks versus whites and stuff, there's still issues going on with minority groups.
Right.
Like, you have these white supremacists who obviously are, like, you have the KKK, right, who are against the civil rights movement and things like that. Like, that's forever going to be a thing. And so even with transgenderism, with gay rights, no matter how far we get, there's always going to be people who are against it. And just the community being together and forced to suppress that attempted oppression will be there, right?
Right.
Because it is oppressive to discriminate against these groups.
Yeah.
And there is a there's an internationally accepted morality around it that's why we know these white supremacists are in the wrong.
Yeah.
And so like with that, like with the trans stuff, I hope the surgery gets to a point where it's not controversial or a problem. I don't know what you know about it. I don't even know how much I know about it or anything like that. So
if I'm being honest, I really I mean, I really don't know much about it either.
And this isn't to insult you or put you down for it, because I know sometimes it feels insulting when you haven't done, like when you're arguing with someone else, say you're the one who's done the research and someone else hasn't, like you kind of berate them for it, for having such strong opinions and stuff on it. I know better than to do that for you, because you also haven't shown strong opinions. I also recognize, this might be a bad analogy, but because you like bring up the fact that it's like mutilating to the body and stuff, I don't know where you stand now. I only remember where both of us were years ago on abortion and your views on abortion. And with that, and that's a whole nother topic to get into. I don't want to. I'm just using that as
we can get into it. We can make it the transition to abortion. Why not? We can.
All
right, fine.
My understanding of where your
be a lot cooler if we did
views where your views for abortion came from, I kind of recognize that for this possibly as well, right? Like I think one thing that made me much more left or woke is the fact that I've become atheist. Like I don't have like my religious influences anymore, and I don't say that to put down religious views and influence. I just don't have them anymore, where I personally no longer use the argument that we are made in God's image. I no longer use the argument that there's a soul at conception and things like that, right? Like those aren't arguments I recognize, because they're not something I'm convinced about. I'm not convinced that there is a soul, and I'm not convinced that there is a God. And so those arguments being used, especially with like a lot of my understanding of religion and like the Bible and stuff like that, which that could take years for us to talk about and like get to a common area, or it could take minutes. My understanding of it all, or my disregard for it, kind of stops certain discussions from happening, right? Like the discussion on abortion is going to be super hard between the two of us. If this is just a bad assumption, or it's not even an assumption, I'm just making a hypothetical. Say you were to use some religious arguments from, say, the Bible, the use of God, or the idea of the soul or spirit. If you were to use those arguments in the discussion, things that I hold no recognition of validity to, the discussion won't ever be able to go anywhere, right?
No, I'll just say this really quick. I have developed a belief that I will absolutely never use a religious argument in a political debate. So just an FYI.
Sweet.
just because only because, and not to say I'm not religious, because I very much am, but it almost just like it's kind of one of those things, like when someone does it, you're like, oh my God, like really, dude, like really? Yeah, like that's how I feel when I hear somebody bring up like the Bible or like their religion in a political argument. Is it's like, why would you do that? Like it's almost like just dumb to me. So anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. So like a problem I have with like, say, Bible stuff is when people use it is the number of contradictions within it, right? Like you almost have to ask someone, do they generally choose and pick what they take from the Bible? And if they do, what genuine validity does the Bible hold if you're choosing and picking what you want to accept from it, things like that.
Right.
But I am happy to hear that you don't use that, and that's more of a personal thing. I'm being subjective here. Like, I'm happy to hear that you try and avoid that stuff, like that not redeems, because I wasn't thinking less of you necessarily, but like it makes me happy to know that.
Well, I will say, as I guess a caveat to that, though, I will also admit that like my religious views do influence like my views, but I would never, okay, like for example, okay, let's just do the example. I'm not we don't have to go into abortion, but you asked about the views on like my views on like body mutilation. The reason I'm against it is definitely because I have like a religious background, and so I but that doesn't take away from the fact that my view is just that I think your body, your physical body is I don't want to say gift because again I think that's religious, but I
Like
think you're
sacred. It's like
yeah, but I don't even want to say that. I don't even want to say that because that's more religious. Like
right.
I think your body is a gift from nature, from like your natural body is how you were born is your natural body, and I think that's
Mhm.
like
Okay.
how the earth itself wanted it to be, right? And so
Yeah, I get that.
and so I think it's physically harming, like physically harming to yourself to like want to physically change it, like to remove parts from yourself because and that's all. I think that's like the end of my argument, really. Like I just don't think it's good to like to allow your brain to dictate physical major changes to your body. That's all. And and permanent ones at that, honestly. And again, like I'll admit that that comes from like a religious standpoint, but I'm not gonna pull like I'm not gonna pull a scripture on like on that. I here's my thing. I respect people who have religious views if they can back it up with like genuine logic of why they think it without being religious, right? Like I don't know, and not to like toot my own horn, but I think that if someone were to tell me like I just think your body is special and it's special just from a science standpoint, to be honest, right? And I think to want to physically change it because of something your brain is thinking, I don't think is right. And I think it's like, especially if it's physically destructive to parts of your body, I don't think that's right permanently. And I would be like, dude, that's a great answer. Like, that doesn't give, like, I don't get any religious vibes from that, right? But but it is, you've admitted that it is from a religious standpoint, like, fair enough. But you know what I'm saying? Versus if
Yeah.
someone were to be like, "Oh, your body's a gift from God. You shouldn't destroy it because God's gonna be mad." Like,
Yeah.
okay, dude. Like come on.
Things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Like, okay. Like,
The reason I to a degree, right, like I give you benefit of the doubt to a degree, but I also don't obviously to a degree, is because I grew up in with the same teachings as you did, relatively to the church anyways, not personal like parents and stuff. But with that, like how you say it's like a gift from nature, if anything, or like it's an accumulation of nature. I use that same argument to almost like open it up to being like do what you want with it. Like you don't have to oh fuck, my AirPods are dying. You don't have to cherish it necessarily in an almost sacred way.
and that's fine. And
Even then,
and that's fine. Like again, I think that's where I would just like if you make that argument, I would just have to agree to disagree. Like I respect you for having that opinion, but like for me, it's like, well, I just see my body as like it's a unique thing from nature. Like, why would I want to change it? I guess.
okay, yeah. And so from there then, I guess like the last point I want to make here. Sorry, my AirPods are dying, so I might
You're
have
good.
to put you on speakerphone. Here, let me do that right now.
Okay.
Okay. I guess like one last point I kind of want to make to that then, and it's more so to just kind of your bearings on it, because I think that's a fine thing to have about it, is like you care about body, you care about, let's say, just in a nature way, you care about the body, and you don't like the idea of mutilating it to degrees like that, right? Like to the extent of say mutilating it for your genitals, things like that, genitalia.
Or anything, honestly. Like if someone were to say like I don't know, like
And BBLs and stuff like that, which are
that's
much more risk than even gender affirming surgery. Like there's a risk of dying to those much more because of like infection. There's much easier to be infected, and there's a lot more deaths from Botox than there are from gender affirming surgeries. Like, is that something that you would have a stance against? I don't mean to like try and entrap you here either. So like if you don't have an answer for that yet, that's totally fine.
I guess I'd have to think about it, but I don't really see. I mean, again, I think I'm against it in the same kind of way. Like I don't think you need to change your body to like, because a lot of people do it to look better, right? Like they're like, oh, I don't think I have this. I want to look better. And it's like, well, no, you like, this is how you look. Like,
And
I
so,
think you look great. You have a natural body. That's great. Like, and so yeah, I'm against it in the sense of like, I think your body's a gift from nature. Like, I don't think you need to change it to look better, right? But again, see that's a good tie because that also ties to your just psyche. Like your psyche is telling you don't look good, and that's a societal like influence of what looks good. And like same like again, my argument would go back to my if tomorrow society just said everyone looks beautiful, would people still be getting BBLs? Well, maybe because maybe it is a serious mental illness that people have about their the way they look, right? And I think that needs to be looked at. Like, is it actually good to give people BBLs? Like, is it actually destructive to their mind? Like, if they get it and they're like, oh my gosh, I have it, but I still have these thoughts. Like, well, then it didn't help. And in fact, it probably made it worse because now they're like, oh my gosh, like the BBL didn't do it. I still don't look good. I'm going to kill myself. Right. You know, as an extreme.
yeah.
But that's my thing. And so I guess I'm against it, yeah, in the same way I'm against, you know, like the other mutilation. But again, if you're on the boat of if you argue like, well, it's your body, your choice, you know, do whatever, then I'm like, okay, cool, like that's fine.
Yeah. So like if say I was transgender and I wanted to do the surgery, I obviously see you. I feel like anyone, regardless, is always going to show concern to their loved ones when they want to do something like that.
Right.
But say I was fine everywhere, but I was just like, yeah, I really want to go through the gender affirming surgery.
Yeah.
I trust it and I do it and it goes well, things like that.
Sure.
And I feel better, etc. Even 10 years down the line,
Mm-hmm.
would you have been against it for me outside of just the say body mutilation part? Would you be like, okay, I'm really happy you went through that because you clearly are living the life you want and you're doing better? Like, are you still against it solely because of the mutilation part, or are you like, hey, in this scenario, you know, this worked out, things like that? Like, say, even before the surgery, I was just dead set on it and I really wanted to do it. Would you be supporting, say, policy that would stop me from being able to get that surgery? Would you
support policy? No, I wouldn't support policy that stopped you from getting it if the research and like if you personally went through it and you lived a happy life and you were like 10 times better than you were before. Hell no, I wouldn't support any policy that stopped you from getting it because it clearly worked. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. And so that is the case for a lot of people. Obviously, it's never going to be some like 100% pass fail ratio thing.
Right.
But
yeah, and I guess that's my point. Like if the research, and I'd want to look at the research because I haven't. If 90+% of the surgeries happened and they live full healthy lives and they are, you know, and obviously you can't like put a number on happiness, but you know, they claim to be 10 times happier or whatever, you know, happier, whatever. They live full lives, healthy lives. Then I'd be like, I would change my mind. Yeah, absolutely. I'd be like, no, like the surgery is good, right? Like it's clearly helping people. I think my thing is I'm just skeptical of that.
Right. And
really because the BBL is a great example and stuff like that, like Botox, because there's a lot of people who get that, and even after they still have like, you know, what's that called when you like you think you're ugly all the time, or you can't stand while you.
It's still a dysphoria. It's like body dysphoria.
Yeah, and there's a lot of research that shows that they still have it even after, and it's like
right,
and so then that tells me like it doesn't work, like it's something else, like there's some other issue and it's not working. So and same with that, if the research came back and said, hey, like Botox, BBLs, all this stuff is actually like really helping people are so much happier, they're just as healthy now as they were before or even healthier, then again, yeah, like I'm changing my mind. Like how can I not change my mind? Right? Like because again, my whole thing with this is like I have a concern, and if it's helping, my concern is gone, right? So anyway, that's kind of my rundown.
Yeah. So two things there. I kind of like what you say. It seems like you're not against anything except a concern for it all, and like maybe an advocate for caution and like patience for things to really be figured out and known.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Like I want it to
and-
be cautious. Like I don't want everybody to be getting the surgery because like, you know, one person said they felt good 2 weeks later, right? Right. So
Right.
anyway, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. This is just like a quick thing that I've pulled up. It's a research paper published in the National Center for Biology Institute, and then also the National Library of Medicine.
Yeah. Well, good stuff.
So I've been doing homework all day, and this thing is supposed to take me like 30 minutes, and I'm only quarter of the way.
You're 2 hours in. All right, well I can let you go to do that.
Oh yeah, you're welcome to use this for stuff. Just obviously make disclaimers to help
Yeah.
it not look bad, because this discussion requires better sources and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But regardless, like you can.
Well, maybe we'll get some like medical professionals in the comments that can yell at us and be like, "That's it," or at least just give us some links.